Our ground troops headed to the Middle East to fight ISIS. The president gave us an answer today. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome to the Wrap, everybody. I'm Joe Concha. I'm joined by Huffington Post columnist and Reverend Jenny Crumpton.
Hi.
And he is the co-host of Steele and Unger on Sirius XM Radio. Rick Unger is here. How are you, sir?
Always good to be here.
And she is a political strategist and author. Noelle McPoor is here.
I had to sit up for author.
I was trying to build the anticipation.
Author.
Anyway.
It worked really well.
I think it did. Let's go to the Daily Download. And today, President Obama announced he was going to ask Congress for war powers to fight against ISIS. Let's listen.
Today, my administration submitted a draft resolution to Congress to authorize the use of force against ISIL. I want to be very clear about what it does and what it does not do. This resolution reflects our core objective to destroy ISIL. It supports the comprehensive strategy that we've been pursuing with our allies and our partners. A systemic and sustained campaign of airstrikes against ISIL in Iraq and Syria, support and training for local forces on the ground, including the moderate Syrian opposition, preventing ISIL attacks in the region and beyond, including by foreign terrorist fighters who try to threaten our countries, regional and international support for an inclusive Iraqi government that unites the Iraqi people and strengthens Iraqi forces against ISIL, humanitarian assistance for the innocent civilians of Iraq and Syria who are suffering so terribly under ISIL's reign of horror.
Okay, so the elephant in the room, are we sending ground troops? All indications from the White House pointed in that direction.
The resolution we've submitted today does not call for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces to Iraq or Syria. It is not the authorization of another ground war, like Afghanistan or Iraq. The 2,600 American troops in Iraq today largely serve on bases. And yes, they face the risks that come with service in any dangerous environment, but they do not have a combat mission.
I want to bring in retired Major General Paul E. Valley, who is also the chairman of Stand Up America. General, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Joe, for having me on.
So, General, the president has been criticized by the right and by the left as being weak on ISIS. Did he change that perception today?
No, I think it's more rhetoric, Joe, and, troops on the ground, and I'll try to dispel that myth or that misunderstanding what that is if you'd like, but this is more rhetoric. Listen, we're at war. You have to have a strategy to win, and we don't have to tell the enemy what the strategy is. We don't even pronounce or say ahead of time what current and future operations will be. So there's a lot of rhetoric there, not a lot of specifics, especially on what has occurred other than generalities that we've reduced their capability, we've limited them to a great degree. That's all rhetoric. They're not specifics that we need to have in what we call a post-damage assessment of the bombings over there.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out, General, where we heard throughout the week that the president will be asking for authorization to take more action against ISIS, but I feel like we've already been taking action to a certain extent, at least with all the airstrikes. So I agree with you in the sense where it does seem to be symbolic. I guess my question is, will this be successful?
No, it won't be successful because he's a weak leader. The Middle East understands that. The leaders over there, their coalition of 60-some countries that he said earlier is a myth. The only coalition right now is King Abdullah, with limited support from the United States and some limited support in Iraq by the Iraqi forces. But, this whole thing about troops on the ground, we have troops in Jordan, we have troops on the ground in Turkey and Kuwait, in Iraq, 2,600 in Iraq serving. But we need to have joint strike force operations. We need to have air ground forces, special ops on the ground, eyes and ears, locating the targets, and then bringing in the laser-guided missiles. I'd bring in the B-52s, and I would unload on ISIS to the nth degree, and let's get victory over this barbaric organization.
That sounds like a pretty good plan, and we certainly appreciate you joining us, General, today, and thanks again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That was General Paul E. Valley. And let's bring in our panel right here. And Noelle, you heard what the general had to say. What do you think?
Well, I think he's right on. I think it is a lot of empty rhetoric, and I think that most Americans view his foreign policy as a little weak. I mean, you have to remember way back in the day when he won in 2008, he started off with an apology tour where he's bowing to leaders. Yeah, so you've got to realize, first of all, this is a president who doesn't really want to be involved in this at all. He doesn't really want to even, say the word terrorism or radical Islam. So this is not his forte. It's not really what he likes to do, but he's been forced, he's been called on the carpet to do something. So I feel that it's just a lot of good rhetoric that he thinks the public needs to hear now.
Rick, you're shaking your head in total agreement.
Speaking of rhetoric, here's the funny part. I actually agree with the general's prescription. I want to blow him off the earth too. But let me tell you what drives me nuts. The president got up there today, he painted way too rosy a picture. He was running down our accomplishments against ISIL so far. He was clearly being too rosy. But then I hear General Valley, who I've heard so many times before, and all due respect, Noelle, the same talking points I've heard for 6 years. And you know what? This will get us nowhere. He does care about ISIL. He has to care. He may be doing a terrible job in fighting them. Let me finish. But this whole rhetoric thing is so stupid. I want there to be a new strategy. I think the reality is whatever gains that we've made there, when we find out that their forces are growing by leaps and bounds, latest estimate being it's now gone to 200,000, that means we aren't doing enough. We will not get there. We will not get to where we need to get to. He won't get there if this stupid conversation continues. Push the president to do what you want him to do. Stop calling him names and saying he doesn't care.
And the number you brought up before,
it's such a waste.
Is very disconcerting.
It's important. It is disconcerting.
Well, because it was 20,000 or it's 40,000, and the fact that it's gone to 200,000,
that should bother
and we've
everybody.
done airstrike after airstrike, and it seems like, Jenny, that while we're containing, perhaps we're not doing really anything to cripple this organization.
Well, we are actually doing a lot to dismantle their leadership and reduce their resources. But look, again, I'm going to say this is not the same old war we're fighting. This is non-state actors. President Obama made it very clear that our strategy is to work with people in the region and support their troops, and to send in special forces when they need to do very specific things. We can't do the old thing anymore.
Either way, well, you're right about that. Either way, this is escalating in one way or another, that's for certain. Coming up next, NBC News nightly anchor Brian Williams gets some bad news. This is the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV.
This was a bungled attempt by me to thank one special veteran, and by extension, our brave military men and women, veterans everywhere, those who have served while I did not. I hope they know they have my greatest respect, and also now my apology.
So how did that apology work out for Brian Williams anyway? Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I am Joe Concha with Jenny Crumpton, Rick Unger, and Noelle Nikpour. Attention everyone, with Photoshop, you can now stop inserting Brian Williams into historical photos. This after NBC made a decision regarding the future of their top-rated anchor. But since I did bring up the whole funny photos thing, let's take a look at a couple more you may have seen before I tell you what NBC decided. Photo number 1. Will be.
No,
it
it is.
It is Brian Williams with the boss, Bruce Springsteen of New Jersey, and he's thanking him for writing Born to Run. Photo number 2, there he is, actually in the Civil War, wearing a very modern suit despite being back in that time. So
I took
good for
that
him.
picture.
There he is in the back of Rick, clarified for me this earlier, that is a presidential Lincoln before Kennedy was shot. Amazing that he wasn't hit because of, there was a magic bullet, obviously, that hit the governor as well.
Oh.
So anyway, that was fun, wasn't it? So what were we talking about? Oh yeah, NBC News made a decision. Brian Williams, even though he apologized and even suspended himself, has been suspended by the network for 6 months without pay. For those keeping score at home, that's a $5 million suspension. Williams makes $10 million a year. Here's what NBC News President Deborah Turnus said. Quote, as managing editor and anchor of Nightly News, Brian has a responsibility to be truthful and to uphold the high standards of the news division at all times. We felt it would have been wrong to discard the good work Brian has done and the special relationship he has forged with our viewers for over 22 years. Millions of Americans have turned to him every day, and he has been a very important and well-respected part of our organization, end quote. Interesting, but seriously, off the air for 6 months without pay. Noelle, let's start with you. Does the punishment fit the crime?
The punishment fits the crime. I mean, let's face it, in every job, in every marriage, in every friendship relationship, honesty is the best policy. When you break the trust, no matter if it's a friend, no matter if it's your job, you're out. I think that this is just going to ease him totally out. I think that if it were one comment that he lied about or had a discrepancy, that's one thing. But my gosh, now there's a floating body, there's all sorts of things that are going to be looked at. And I don't know why he did it. I guess maybe it was the arrogance of his position, thinking that anything that he said would be the authority or set the record. And because he was riding so high to keep that #1 spot, I guess that he wanted to act like he was in the moment of the news.
I had a theory on it, and I think it's a pretty good one, that he was both a reporter or a journalist,
Right.
an anchor, and a celebrity.
Yes.
And his love for the celebrity side of the job
Yeah.
eclipsed his responsibilities as a journalist. And what we saw
Yeah.
from I know it's a 6-month suspension.
Yeah.
You talk to anybody, there are too many things he has to overcome and too many investigations going on into every report he's ever done over
Yeah.
22 years. That is not a suspension that we're looking at now. That is an obituary.
Well, do you remember when he hosted SNL? I mean, he's a reporter, he's a journalist, and I thought that role of putting him in kind of a comedian spot, I mean, that in itself is inappropriate.
He's the face of the brand. He's not just the nightly news anchor.
Absolutely.
And so when he goes on late night television, you know, they're doing it to try to appeal to younger viewers. But I think it really backfired on him trying to be so cool. But,
Right.
you know, the CEO of NBC Universal, Steve Burke, left the door open for him. He said he deserved severe punishment, but that he also deserved a second chance and that they are rooting for him. So, you know, when the CEO of NBC Universal has that to say, it really leaves the door open. People like an underdog. In America, this happens a lot with people in the NFL and other people who behave
You're
badly.
right. They love a comeback, certainly. Rick, here's why I don't think he can come back, however, because there are two very provable things that NBC just has to look at, and it's not a matter of, well, you mentioned the body in Katrina. There were floodwaters on the edge of the Ritz-Carlton where he was staying. There's enough ambiguity to save him. Now, that said, in that same instance, he's in the Ritz-Carlton and says that it's being overrun by gangs and said he had to resort to it. Right, Ritz. And the police actually had a staging station in there. But he said he had to go to a stairwell, and a policeman got him out of there. A policeman he says he's still friends with to this day. So I would imagine that Steve Burke and Deborah Turnus and whoever else is doing the investigation is going to talk to this
They probably
policeman.
talked to the cop.
Right? And either they already
Yeah.
talked to him and said, all right, you're out. And then one more thing, Rick. He said that he contracted dysentery.
Yeah.
Now, no, dysentery isn't something that you take 2 aspirin, have a little soup, and hope that it goes away.
It's messy.
It's messy, and you have to get medical attention.
why was he drinking out of the
Therefore,
street?
That's a very good point. You do
Especially
that.
after the dead body.
Yeah.
The point being is that there's a record of this somewhere. You can't just recover on your own. So once those two things alone, there's 1,000 of them it seems, are proven, it's over.
I
That's
will
it.
submit that absolutely none of that matters. Here's what matters. If Lester Holt's ratings crater, if they try Matt or Savannah and their ratings crater, welcome back, Brian. The guy's been leading the race in that time slot for quite a while now. Lester's ratings did crater on Friday as compared to Monday through Thursday when Williams was there. If the ratings crater, he'll be back. If they don't,
Well,
I think
let me just get the numbers on Rick. It was a 36% drop from Monday through Thursday, and then when Lester came on
That's pretty
on
huge.
Friday, that's 1/3 of your audience.
That's
Really
huge.
big, yeah.
Your stage.
Well, you know, look, I think that they are giving him a 6-month suspension so that they can really dig in, see how many bad things and how many skeletons in the closet
Or
are there,
just let it go
and
away.
Yeah, they don't
determine,
wanna know.
or so that way they can make an informed decision. They either let it dissipate and just go away, or they try for a comeback.
But let's say they do make an informed decision and say, you know what, maybe we didn't find anything. Isn't the trust now, Noelle, isn't it gone.
The trust
Can
is
you
gone.
put Humpty Dumpty back
No.
together? Can you put the toothpaste back in the tube? Can you unring the bell? Give me another analogy. I'm on a roll.
No, you know, it's not. And it's another thing is the people that run NBC are not idiots. You know, these guys are cool executives. No, they're not. And there's no comeback for him. There's no spot they're saving for him. Even if the ratings go down the tube with someone else, people don't trust him. Are you going to watch the news wondering, is that true? It's going to bring it back. It's going to resurrect it.
I'm
the
with
minute
you
they
on
put him
that.
back.
And, you know, I have also my theory as to why he did it. And in the end, he wanted to be like the Dos Equis guy, the most interesting man in the world who we have up here. It wasn't enough. He had 6 things going for him. He had fame, fortune, prestige, respect, looks, and an easy job, by the way. A
And a
22-minute
daughter on
broadcast
Girls.
with
Daughter
all
on
those
Girls.
resources. Incredible. Anyway, we got to go. Coming up next on The Wrap, the trial against the murderer of American sniper Chris Kyle began today. Finally, we'll let you know what happened. This is The Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV.